God's sovereignty means nothing happens in the universe without his permission, plan, or purpose. He's the sovereign king. And so you trust his sovereignty. You trust he's in control. You trust he's in the driver's seat, especially when it gets bumpy. There's never been a day when I was driving where the kids were like, when it got bumpy, and the kids were like, Dad, you might want to make a turn here. Hey, slow down. My kids are like, Dad's in the driver's seat. My wife's a different situation. My wife being, somebody say amen. But my kids know they don't know. So they can only trust. And so why am I telling you this? Why are we in big church? Why do we have to take our bibs off? Because some of you are going to go into a situation where life gets worse and your theology won't be big enough. So I just want to take a second, because God, here in Habakkuk, could have easily just said, hey man, it's going to get worse. God in detail tells Habakkuk how bad things are going to get. So just let's go to Sunday school, amen? Chapter 1, verse 6. For behold, so this is God telling Habakkuk, here's how I'm going to deal with all the arrogance and pride in Judah. Watch this. Behold, I'm raising up the Chaldeans, that bitter and hasty nation who march through the breadth of the earth to seize the dwellings not their own. Babylon is trying to conquer all of the earth. And Judah is a strategic location that they would want to conquer, because Judah lands in the middle of Babylon and Egypt. And if you can conquer Judah, you can conquer an area called the Levant. And the Levant is like an I-95 corridor between the two. And if you conquer that area, you now are able to conquer trade and troops and taxes. You can make more money. So that's why Babylon wants to conquer them. And when you look back in the text, the word Chaldeans, the southern region of Babylon is Chaldea. So whenever you hear about the Chaldeans, it is synonymous with Babylonians. Amen? So what he's saying here is, the Babylonians, I'm essentially going to send the Babylonians. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about them. He says they are bitter and they are hasty, meaning they are cruel and they are swift, militarily speaking. He says they're relentless. Now, God could have stopped right there. And it's as if he goes, but wait, it gets worse. Verse 7. They are dreaded and fearsome. Their justice and dignity go forth from themselves. Understand that what he says here does not mean that they are just and dignified. He's saying when it says they go forth from themselves, essentially what he's saying is they are a law unto themselves. They don't answer to anybody. They have their own form of justice, their own form of dignity. They are self-serving and they are self-exalting. They are godless people. God, are you done? No, it gets worse. Verse 8. Their horses are swifter than leopards, more fierce than evening wolves. Their horsemen proudly press on. Their horsemen come from afar. They fly like an eagle swift to devour. Now, he talked about how bad their character is. They're bitter and they're hasty. But then he goes on to say, now look what they're working with. Their military power is quick. Notice, if you notice in the text, all of their military is being compared to apex predators. Leopards. When he says an evening wolf, wolves, they devour at night. So he's talking about a certain posture a wolf has. And an eagle, when it's getting its prey, the speed that it goes down at. So he's basically saying these boys are bad. And they are fast like a leopard, fierce like a wolf at night, and they fly in like eagles. It's as if God is Babylon's hype man, talking about how bad these boys are. So what does he do? He talks even more. Verse 9. They come for violence, all their faces forward. Watch this. They gathered captives like sand. And when he says they gathered captives like sand, he is prophesying the exile where Israel would be captured by Babylon, and they therefore would have captives. And you might have heard these names before in the book of Daniel. Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. That's all during the captivity to Babylon under the hand of Nebuchadnezzar. And he's saying they are going to capture your people. And basically when you would capture a people, you would take young talent and you would colonize their mind. You reprogram their minds. You take the young talent. And that's what he does with them. How many does he have? He says they're going to have so many captives, it's going to seem like the sand. Have you ever tried to count sand? It's innumerable. He's saying these boys are bad. They're going to capture everybody. And then he says in verse 10, at kings they scoff, at rulers they laugh at every fortress. They pile up earth and take it. And this is a crazy thought. When you have a fortress, this is your defense. It's your wall. And when you put your wall up, it essentially says, don't go any further. But essentially, at the end there, where it says they pile up earth and take it, places like Babylon were so skilled in their military prowess that they had ways where they would take dirt and they would create a ramp. So essentially, their fortresses, their walls were too small, and they had so many people that they could pile up dirt that they would create a walkway to walk over their wall. And essentially what he's saying is, your defense is nothing to them. They laugh at it. And finally, he says in verse 11, then they sweep by like the wind and go on. But watch this, what he says. Guilty men whose own might is their God. Now I want you to pay attention to this. He says they're guilty. After all these descriptions God has shown them of their strength, God drops a moral judgment. He says they are guilty. He condemns them. At the same time, he's saying, I'm raising them up. Now, put that into your Sunday school. What's that mean? Just because God uses them doesn't mean God approves of them. That means there are evil things that can happen in your life that God will use, and he'll still call it evil, but he'll still use it. Babylon is an instrument, but they are not innocent. He's using them. And this is hard because this is what happens. Habakkuk's like, I've been living for you, Lord. I got this burden. My people are wilding out. And everybody's corrupt. The nation's corrupt. The people of God are corrupt. So God, I want you to swoop in and do what only you can do. And God says, bet, here we go, Babylon. And he's like, whoa, 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 whoa. I wanted you to deal with the corruption. He's like, yes, but the way I'm going to do it is by raising up a more corrupt nation to wipe out the corruption in our nation. Wow, God. That is shocking. That is different than what people would expect. Because what we want is, we want a God that is just untainted by evil. It's easy to believe that God allows evil. It's harder to wrap your mind around God using evil. what you in Babylon doing, God? Why are you even operating with Babylon? Why would you even use those evil, harsh things? And in many ways, what you have to understand is God will sometimes use what you hate to shape what he loves. To crush your pride. And he'll allow you to go through all types of stuff to bring you low, to make you humble. He'll use mean people, evil people, cruel people, angry people. And you'll be like, where'd they come from? The Lord. Now, that does not mean God approves of their character. But God will allow all types of people and situations in your heart. Theologically, it's the same God who used Pharaoh's hard heart to reveal his power. Same God who let Joseph's jealous brothers put him in slavery so he could be positioned in Egypt. The same God who used Judas's betrayal for the cross. Same God. God is so sovereign that even evil can become his servant.